So, welcome back to 3rd Age Reforged, but more importantly, welcome for the first time to 0.96 in the state in which it has been released. So, obviously, hopefully we will be able to see a bit more in terms of 3rd Age Reforged, because I haven't really been able to do so much on it in the past 2 weeks or so, mainly because we have been on the cusp of having 0.96 released since then, and I've been trying to hold off on doing more Reforged for that period of time, really. So hopefully now that 0.96 is around, I can do a few more set piece battles, because I know that's what people do want most of all from me. We shall first of all, though, this is going to be a slightly smaller battle, because this one was sent to me by Second Pink on the... It was actually only like a couple of hours after the patch released, so obviously people were very eager to get going on it straight away, and this is the first battle I'm going to be showing. And also, it's just shy of 20,000 frames long, so hopefully that means there's not going to be a protracted skirmish, because if I'm honest, in the testing process, whenever I was able to join the testing process, unfortunately most of the time I was faced with a very skirmish heavy army, and it was never really a particularly fun thing to be a part of. But hopefully this time we won't be seeing too much of that, because it is a relatively short battle. It is a 3v3, and we do have the orcs on the field who are not backwards in coming forwards most of the time. So Second Pink is playing as Mordor at the front here. He's got some orc archers, just sort of the basics. They're not quite as bad as the scouts, of course, but honestly, cheap archers for the most part as the orcs are the way to go, because you can drown your enemy beneath the sheer volume of fire that you have. And if the enemy archers are not well armoured, then they're going to be able to do some decent damage in a skirmish fight. Now, they will struggle a little bit to take on more heavily armoured infantry, so they won't be able to tilt the infantry battle in your favour all that much unless you get into a very nice position to shoot along the line. But even so, I think that cheap archers like this are a very good augment to use, considering the orcs are quite aggressive, and you can obviously hound the enemy archer line as far as they will retreat. Over here we do have a ballista, a standard ballista actually, so it's possible that Mordor have had the other ballista. Well, no, Mordor do have the other ballista, I think, but I think this is maybe just the cheaper variant. So they do have a standard ballista here at the front with obviously the crew. So again, they do have a pretty decent skirmish presence here on the field. We'll see if that comes into play with regards to whoever they are facing off against. Just in behind them, we've got a full complement here of Morannon infantry, so it does look as though he's got, I don't know, about 4 units of Morannon infantry. And they've got the upgraded armour model as well, so they're going to be a little bit more difficult to break down. Good call to the Mordor army, especially when they've got their upgraded armour, because then they're not as easy to get rid of. They won't obviously go toe-to-toe with some of the higher tier stuff, and against a unit of genuine quality they will be cut through fairly easily. But as far as having the main bulk of your infantry goes, they're pretty decent. And then back here we also have a similar story with the Morannon halberds. They too have their upgraded armour, and of course with their armour-piercing polearms they will do a very good job at backing up the Morannon infantry. Very good front line that Mordor have here in terms of numbers, simply because there's so many of them, and they do offset one another's strengths quite well with the AP polearms back here, and then the shielded heavy infantry at the front. So difficult to break down, but there's not a great deal of quality with regards to singular units, which may well prove to be their undoing here at the front. But they do have a few units of individual quality at the back, as I'm sure you can already see. We've got the Temple Guard here, who are of course one of the 3 armour-piercing archers in the game. Very good range, and of course when they do run out of ammo they are a very effective melee combatant as well, just a little bit short of the Temple Inquisitor's stat line, so they should do a decent job when they run out of ammunition as well. But the armour-piercing missiles are obviously the main attraction to bringing the Temple Guard in the first place. And back here, as I'm sure you've noticed, we also have the Nazgul, so the Nazgul are a part of Mordor now. And again, as always, I've said this ever since Vanilla, when I was doing stuff back for that, the Nazgul are best off when you can embed them in a line, and so they don't get focused down. So they absolutely want to be right in the middle of some of these Morannon orcs here. That will give them good cover against being focused down by archer fire, and also it will allow them to get into melee, where they are of course going to be very, very deadly against whoever they're fighting. The Nazgul are very difficult to bring down regardless of who you are. We've got some troll drummers here. This will help keep all of the Morannon units in check, prevent them from routing off. We also have some mountain trolls over here. And then back here, this is, well, the Nazgul is obviously the General's bodyguard unit. We do have some mobility here from Second Pink. We've got some Melkor's Chosen, who, you know, the Caragor riders, very strong anti-cavalry bonus, very good in terms of a melee fight with other cavalry, and also they're obviously pretty good off the charge as well. Essentially they're wargs on steroids, but we'll see. I mean, there's only 1 mounted unit here, so they do need to be careful they don't get isolated. They do have a lot of trolls, however, and that does include, of course, this is Crimson Battlebeat's model, because this of course was the same troll skeleton that he used for the troll drummers. We have the new and improved Olag High, so they now are noticeably bigger than their mountain troll brethren over here, which gives them a bit more of a presence on the battlefield, because the Olag High did tend to blend in a little bit. They were kind of put to shame a little bit in the last patch visually by the Trolls of the White Hand, and the Trolls of Angmar, but now the Olag High are arguably the most intimidating troll unit on the field. These giant warhammers, and obviously they're going to be able to do a ton of damage if they get into the right position. Olag High, of course, with their good armor values. So who is second pick fighting off against on this side of the battlefield? Well, that is Lindon. Dictar to the power of N is playing as Lindon, and he has got a front line of 4 Lindon pikes here. Now they need to be very careful they don't get focused down by the Orc archers, and low tier Orc archers are going to be pretty good against Lindon, to be honest with you. The lack of armour is really going to hurt them, especially these pikes if they get caught in the sights of those Orc archers for too long. Out here on the flank he's got some Lindon infantry as well, obviously the sort of basis of most Lindon armies, to be honest with you. This sort of decent melee infantry, very similar to the Eldar Makar of Imladris. You'll see them a lot used as the basis of a front line. Back here we do have quite a lot of 4 Lindon archers, in fact 3 units of 4 Lindon archers. Now they are good obviously as Elven archers, they're the lowest tier of Lindon archer, but low tier Elven archers are still going to be very strong, but they do still lack quite a lot of armour, so the Orcs could actually outlast Lindon in the skirmish fight here depending on how this goes. Over here on the flanks however we do have some cavalry, and we have some Wardens of Harlingen, so I think these are lancers when they pull out their spears on the charge. They're also horse archers, of course. So Lindon have got a lot of these hybrid units throughout their roster, and it does make them quite versatile with regards to the armies that they can pick, of course. And the Wardens of Harlingen as horse archers, you do need to be quite careful with them because they can obviously be focused down by enemy archer fire and, of course, crossbows if you get too close. But they can be used as a good tool to sort of harass the lines and really support your infantry when it comes down to it. And he's got 2 units of them. Meanwhile, let's go back into the middle over here. We can see that at the back he's got some of his more serious units. If we just go over here for a start, there we've got 2 more units, I think, of Harlingen infantry ready to support the front line of pikes over there. And then back here we have some of the more serious units. So Noldorin Guard, you can only have 1 of them now before the price increases. And they have had, I think, their unbreakable trait taken away from them. But they do still have the encouragement aura, and of course they are still the only truly well-armoured Lindon infantry unit in the game. Lindon unit, to be honest. Over here we've got some Mithlon Swordmasters, of course, standard heavy elven swordsmen. Anything but standard, however, are these lads over here, the Noldorin Blade Masters, multiple HP, Elven Heavy Swordsmen, so if they get into a fight they will do a lot of damage. They do need to be careful that they don't get into a condensed fight with Nazgul backed up by Moran on infantry, but if they could isolate the Nazgul, they could probably be the one unit that could do a decent amount of damage to them if they're backed up. We've also got a couple of more units of Mithlon Swordmasters, and then finally over here I would imagine this is the Noldorin Horse Lords. Indeed it is, and this is going to be the General's Bodyguard unit. 1-to-1 they will probably lose with the Melkor's Chosen if they stay in sustained combat with them. The Noldorin Blade Masters are a knight unit, but the Melkor's Chosen have got a bigger anti-cavalry bonus. Having said that, the Noldorin Horse Lords are a more versatile unit because obviously they are much better off the charger. They can be much more effectively used as an infantry killer, and they are significantly faster. I think they're the fastest knights in the game, to be honest, seeing as how Lindon are a little bit more lightly armoured, but they also lack a shield to make up for that, so it's pros and cons all around. But here we can see that Lindon largely unchanged, to be honest with you. There's been a few things, like obviously the Noldorin Guard being changed around just a little bit. The archers and changes to archers and knights have also affected them because of the Noldorin Horse Lords, of course, but in terms of looks and unit roster, Lindon are still largely the same. Now we'll go back over to the blue team, and now we shall have a look at Gondor, played by D.F. Thorne. He's got a front line here of Ramas Ekor Garrison archers, and not a bad choice, honestly, because they do have a shield value and they've got decent armour values. They are cheaper than the standard Gondor archers as well, and they can be really good in a skirmish fighter, just soaking up that arrow fire in a similar vein to how the Orcs do things with their archers. Similar sort of philosophy here with the Ramas Ekor Garrison archers. They do, however, have some genuinely quality archers as well. The Veterans of Osgiliath, slightly higher range than the equivalents over on the other side, and if we have a look over here, you can see that we've got Boromir. So Boromir is in the Veterans of Osgiliath, and decent archer presence they've got on the field, depending on who they're fighting, of course. Having a look here on the front line, we can see that he's got some Citadel Guard. Obviously, Gondor's pole arms are going to be the heart and soul of their army for the most part, and the Citadel Guard are the sort of tankier, more capable version of the Gondor Spearmen. But even better than them, of course, are the Nimlothian Honor Guard, previously known as the Shielded Fountain Guard, of course. Very, very powerful. You know, I would say that in terms of an elite infantry unit in 0.95 at any rate, they were by far and away my favourite. You know, they were really the only ones that I would bring 9 times out of 10 in a field battle as well as a siege battle. They were so good, and I can't imagine they've been toned down all that much, because Gondor do need units like this in order to keep their front line together. Otherwise, cavalry has a bit of a tendency to do quite a lot of damage to them. Here we've got some Gondor infantry who have received the first armour upgrade. They're not quite in their full plate. They do have some plate pauldrons and gauntlets, so this is obviously the bronze armour upgrade, and Gondor infantry is pretty decent. I mean, They do find themselves outclassed by stuff like Guardians of Khārn Dûm and Castamir's Legion, but they will go toe-to-toe quite effectively with other units of similar type from them in the Kingdoms of Men, and they can also do a very good job at holding back a lot of low-tier units because of their high defensive values. Back here, we do have some Pelargir Marines, so some Javelin support, 2 units of Pelargir Marines in fact. We've also got some Caerandor Swordmasters, of course, for that skill. That additional punch on the front line, which Gondor can lack. They can fall into the trap of being a bit too defensive and not able to kill their enemies quickly enough. But fortunately, the Caerandor Swordmasters are a good unit you can use to offset that slightly anyway. We've also got Elisar's Vanguard over here, of course, basically the Gondorian Haven Guard. And then over here, of course, we have Aragorn as well. So both Aragorn and Boromir are fighting in the Gondorian army today. In fact, I think Gandalf might be as well. So the Fellowship has assembled. And obviously the Elisar's Vanguard, provided they're supported, they will do very well in a situation like this. They do need to be careful they're not singled out, however, because there aren't a lot of them. And over here we've got some standard Gondor Spearmen without any armour upgrades. They've just got their basic mail. And then I think they've got another unit of them on the other side. So yeah, Spearmen out to the flanks, classic. And then some Gandalf's Retinue Bodyguard, obviously multiple HP Lancers. They aren't Knights, so they only cost 1200, so they are slightly cheaper than some equivalents from other factions, but obviously Gondor do struggle in a cav-to-cav fight. The Gandalf's Retinue Bodyguard can do quite well against a unit which is cheaper than they are, but against Knights and melee cavalry, they will fall away just like anything else. And then a unit of Pinnith Gelin Cavalry, who of course previously in the last patch were unlocalized placement text. And they are the other unit of Gondorian Cavalry, which is decent, but not particularly cost effective if you get them into a elongated cavalry fight. And across the field from them we have Josh, who is playing as Dale. So the skirmish fight is likely to go in favour of Dale. Even if Gondor have gone for a slightly more budget approach, Dale's quality should shine through here. The Dalian Marksman here at the front, obviously. Very solid frontline arch unit, they've got a good shield value. And they're not half bad in melee, to be honest with you, when you compare them to others. We also have the Bardian Marksmen, who don't have their armour upgrade, but they are a very, very solid unit indeed. Very tanky, very similar to the Abrazani Nadubawi of Umbar. And unlike Umbar, who are pretty much all about their survivability other than their ranges, Dale also combine that with a bit of damage as well. In particular, if you look over here, Josh has definitely gone for a very archer-heavy army, because he's gone for the Morroquendi Bows, the Elven Arch unit that Dale have in their roster. Previously the Ovari Elder Archers, of course, and like most Elven Archers, they have extremely high accuracy, range, and of course they've got a lot of killing power, so they should be able to do quite well, particularly if they get the Caerandor Swordmasters or Elisar's Vanguard in their sights. So good addition here. But obviously I think they are more expensive than other Elven Archers, simply because they're technically mercenary units. I don't think that affects their morale too much though, because Elves of course have got very high morale naturally. So despite the fact they cost 1,000 each, I think, which is definitely not cheap, obviously the ability to have Elven accuracy on your side in a fight like this is obviously very, very appealing. Over here on the flank, he's got a couple of units of Earls of Dale. So naturally, what Dale wants in this situation is to catch Gondor in an elongated cavalry-to-cavalry engagement, because the Earls of Dale will be able to make quick work of the Pinnith Gelin Cavalry, and over a longer period of time they will be able to deal with the Gandalf's Retinue Bodyguard as well. We've got some Earls of Escaroth down here. Again, similar in many ways actually to the Castamir's Legion. You can bring I think 3 of them before the cost increases, so they are more expensive, but you can put up a very decent heavy infantry front line if you wanted to go for a more of a quality approach with Dale. Very good unit actually, very good armour, but obviously they do fall down against armour piercing units, but you have to prepare for that no matter what. I think we've got 2 units here of the Morroquendi Pike, so very high tier pikemen indeed. Their animations have been fixed, I'm told, so they no longer swing their pikes like halberds, which was really a no, you couldn't bring them because of that. They were too expensive and they would often die to units that they really should have been beating. But now hopefully the Morroquendi Pikes will form up a very effective front line for Dale, and they are being backed up by a lot of chaff here in the shape of the Lake Town Infantry. As far as a basic infantry unit for the Kingdoms of Men go, the Lake Town Infantry are one of the ones of poorer quality, but they are cheaper and you can field them in greater numbers, so it's not a total loss. Back here we have a unit of Girian's Paladins, very strong of course, the armor piercing damage. And then also the General's Bodyguard unit are a unit of Dalian Royal Guard, not the armor-piercing archers that the Blackshot Dragon Slayers are, but they are slightly cheaper, and I think they've got better armour, so they're obviously a little bit better in a skirmish fight if that follows. And then obviously the Earls of Escaroth, and finally over here the Dalian Cavalry. I'm taking a little bit more time over this because I want to show off any new unit models if we come across them. So far we've only really seen the Olar Kai and Boromir, but hopefully we'll be able to see a few more, because here at the final player on the red team we have Eclipse 2500 playing as the Realm of Imladris, and at the front obviously some Eldar Quinga, so the cheaper archer, but obviously as elves they're still going to get a nice amount of accuracy off. They're not actually a loose formation, which could well be used against them by the blue team. So there's a lot of Eldar Quinga here at the front line. And then just in behind them, looks like we've got a front line of slightly more quality infantry, because we've got the Imladris Guardians. They haven't got their armour upgrade, but they are still going to be very, very good. Again, an infantry unit that costs 800 and that you can have more of tends to form a more quality front line than sort of your basic men-at-arms units. Here in the middle we've got some Imladris Blade Masters, so again, lots of damage going to be coming off these lads. And then over on the far side we've got spears, so he's kind of split up his infantry and his spears, which is kind of strange, but the Elder Enway Haru Hatal, of course, Elder Enway Spearmen, always been very, very solid, very difficult to break down, and of course, if cavalry goes near them, they're not really going to get the best out of it unless they charge them in the rear with some hammer and anvil. Back here, a couple of units of Imladris sentries, so some pikemen, and then we have some Noritano cavalry. Now, it's possible, of course, that there are hidden units on all sides, because this is a very small High Elven army, and I can't see, honestly, what they've spent their money on, so there's bound to be some hidden units in there somewhere. The final blue team, however, final blue team player, we have Lango, who is playing as the Realm of Lothlorien, and he has got some Lothlorien mounted company, so already you can see that he's going to have the cavalry advantage because they are going to be superior to the Noritano. The front line, he's also opted for a few more quality skirmishers in the shape of these Lothlorien archers. Here we've also got some Sylvan spears, so just some basic spearmen to help back up the archers. Over here we've also see a ballista and some Lothlorien axes as well. And then just in behind we can see some Lothlorien warriors, so I think, well, these are the sword masters, that's the two-handed, and then the Lothlorien warriors are the axe variant. And then the final wing of his army, looks like indeed we do have another unit of Lothlorien mounted company, and we also have some Galathrin riders and some Ethel Tirith. And that's just about it, so without further ado, let's begin. So this is going to be a rather strange kind of fight, I imagine, because the High Elves, well, the High Elves, Imladris certainly have the skirmisher advantage on this flank, just simply because they have more of them. You know, they only have 2 units of Lothlorien archers over here, which are already under fire, and Lothlorien archers like this, they do have better, well, they have better armor than the Eldar Quinga, but the Eldar Quinga are able to get the first volleys off, and essentially whoever gets the first volleys off, they're going to have the better time of it. And here we can see the Ethel Tirith also moving up. If we go over here, you can see that one problem that Eclipse 2500 may very well run into is that he's in sort of stacked formation here, he's in close formation, and that means that obviously when the Lothlorien archers start to come pouring in, well, now he's getting into loose formation, so it's a bit of a moot point really, but the Eldar Quinga, of course, they're going to be able to get the first shots off, which is all important in a situation like this. Let's see what's going on over here. Not much of anything really, although the Orc Ballista is sort of just firing in. Now, one of the best ways to deal with artillery like this, honestly, is kind of just to stand there and take it. If you get all of your men into loose formation, then the artillery certainly won't pay for itself most of the time. You know, a ballista costs 800 florins, and getting about 30 kills over the course of its entire ammunition's lifespan is never really going to be worth it unless you're firing at a very specific unit, like for instance knights. Then it might well be worth it because you would cut their entire effectiveness away. But we'll see how this goes. The Lindon and Gondor are also moving forward, so the slightly more shielded variant we have here on the other side, of course, a little bit more resilient than the 4 Lindon archers, but honestly, even so, the sheer volume of fire from the orcs might well be enough to discourage any sort of elongated skirmish fight here from Lindon. Lothlorien mounted company coming around here to the flank. I'm not sure what Imladris are trying to do here. It does look like they're running for the shelter of their allies, but this means they're leaving their Eldar Quinga just horribly exposed. You know, this is a pretty basic error. If you want to retreat, you can't just leave units in the lurch like this. With the Eldar Quinga here just getting scythed down. I mean, the Noritano cavalry is coming in, but the Noritano cavalry doesn't stand a chance in a prolonged fight with the Lothlorien mounted company. Pretty infamous, really, the Lothlorien mounted company for having pretty decent skills in melee despite being Lancer cavalry. Their melee skill being very high certainly helps them out there. Imladris is forming up a pretty decent front line over here to help their Dalian ally, but this of course invites the surround to happen. And over here as well you can see that the other unit of Lothlorien mounted company came clattering into the front of these archers, and there's nothing stopping the Lothlorien player now from just going right down the line of the Elven archers, and unfortunately Eclipse is just content to stand here and watch this. I mean, if the High Elves over here, if Imladris loses their archer firepower, they're going to be in real trouble, because then the High Lothlorien are going to have the skirmisher advantage. And a lot of these units, honestly, stuff like the Emladris Blade Master are going to be too much of a target. Having said that, Dale are also a little bit guilty of this as well, because the Earls of Dale are certainly going to be needed to help draw away these Lothlorien Mounted Company. And Dale is kind of just letting his ally make these mistakes, so... Can't pin it all on one person. Meanwhile, of course, over here between Gondor and Dale, it's just an elongated skirmish fight. It's one that Dale is going to win, but whether or not they're going to get value for money off of it remains to be seen. You can see there's a lot of chaos over here where there was a cavalry charge a moment ago. Over here, you can see that Mordor got a little bit too carried away with their ballista there, sent it forwards in front of its lines, and it got charged and destroyed. The Dalian cavalry is now over here, and it could honestly get another nice charge off here onto the Mordor's archers. Wardens of Harlingen over here. Melkor's chosen have taken a good deal of damage. They're being focused down by the Wardens of Harlingen. And they just need to, you know, the Mordor infantry and cavalry just needs to fall back. Let the archers do their work. Let them absorb the enemy ammunition and let them deal out as much punishment as they can. The Orc archers are very, very good at that. It's really the only thing they're good for, because overall damage is certainly not what they have in their favour. But interestingly enough, it seems to be the elves which are most eager to get stuck into things over here. Which is almost unheard of, really. Those Norotino cavalry, though, getting torn apart by the Galathrun riders. Multiple HP bow cavalry. The Norotino warriors are actually going to be able to get a charge off into these Athel Tirith, but whether that proves to be worth it is unknown. Trying to take away some of Lothlorien skirmishers in retaliation for what happened on the other side is maybe not the worst idea, but you are throwing away one of your units of Lancer cavalry to do it. And these are the genuinely scary Lothlorien archers over here. That Lothlorien Mounted Company is routing, so they got a little bit too close, I think, to the archers, although having said that, we can see over here there is yet another cavalry fight. The Norotino cavalry is going to lose in a sustained fight, particularly after receiving a charge from the Mounted Company. But Imladris still content to sort of absorb this pressure, and maybe that's for the best, because Imladris' infantry is very, very good. Lothlorien can't afford to just charge in unthinkingly. They do have some Sylvan Staff Masters over there and some Sylvan Rangers. Now the Rangers could well be absolutely lethal in this sort of situation, because stuff like these sentries over here, the pikes, anything that's clustered too close together is going to receive a pretty prohibitive amount of punishment as the battle goes on, and Imladris does need to be careful here, because they have sort of played their hand rather by retreating, and now they're going to allow Lothlorien to come to them and try and skirmish them down. And the last thing they want to do is retreat their Eldar Quingo too far, because as soon as the Rangers get in, they're going to be able to get 2 units for the price of 1 if they're not careful. Still, the skirmish fight goes on. This was the story of my experience while testing Reforged lately. Just endless skirmishing, felt like Napoleon Total War. But eventually I'm sure we will get a melee engagement, one can only hope. The Ramasekul garrison here are at the front, and they're still absorbing the arrow fire very... Well, hang on a bit. I think there's a unit over there which has taken a bit of a beating. There's only 20 of them left, but pretty stalwart, these low-tier militia archers, all things considered, and it's what Gondor are very good at. But I do think, like, eventually Dale needs to be careful here, because Dale are using up all of their ammunition on these low-tier archers. What Dale really need to be doing is going after some of the infantry of Gondor, because if it turns into a pure infantry scrap when they're both out of ammunition, Gondor are going to be able to roll Dale over. Dale don't have the infantry to really deal with Gondor overall. They do have a lot of pikes, they do have a lot of Lake Town units and the Earls, but overall Gondor have got more numbers. They've also got javelins which can be used to pretty lethal effect as the fight goes on. Lindon skirmishers just sort of edging their way forwards. The Orc archers, they've taken a bit of a beating, but that's what they're there for. Let's have a look back here. How much damage have they done? Well, there's not a great deal of dead Lindon soldiers over here, which leads me to wonder what on earth the Orc archers have been doing, because they should be getting more kills than this against lightly armoured 4 Lindon archers. Most curious. What is this unit down here doing? Unit of routing Dalian cavalry. Can't get away here in the frozen lake bed. So, the Sylvan Rangers I feel like are going to be a real problem. The Ballista is also here, getting a nice hit there on the Imladris sentries, and this is where Imladris retreating is going to work against them, because they've given the initiative over to Lothlorien, and that means the Lothlorien skirmishers and siege equipment is going to be able to pick and choose their targets. Going after the sentries, probably the right choice. The pikes are very lethal, but if they can't reach them, then going after something like the Blade Masters or the Elder Unway Harry Vital will definitely be worthwhile as well. These Lothlorien archers are taking a bit of a beating over here, though. The Rangers are once again hidden. But the Rangers are definitely going to be a very potent tool as the fight goes on. Got those Sindar Blade Masters over here. I think this is actually their standard unit model now. They need to be careful, otherwise they're just going to receive a... There's going to be some friendly fire here. Yep. Friendly fire. You never want to put your men right in front of a ballista. Meanwhile, it looks as though we're going to get some action on the other fronts. Yep, the Orcs are flooding forward. They've had enough of being skirmished, it seems, and they're going to charge headlong into Lindon. Probably for the best as well, because the Wardens of Elos Tyrion are firing their arrows in, and obviously, when you're dealing with body piercing like this, it's going to be nasty for you. You know, the Rangers. I'm still very on the fence about body piercing as a mechanic to you, to be honest. I mean, there is a case for saying that it has somewhat disrupted the balance beyond all recognition, in the sense that it is now 9 times out of 10 you're rewarded for being overly defensive, unless you're, you know, outside of the Orcs, it's very ill-advised that you be aggressive most of the time, just because of the threat of body piercing. It's so lethal. But that I think is a discussion for another time, which I think I will be having relatively soon, because I do have certain complaints, if I'm honest. Nonetheless, the Orcs are flooding forward, and the Orcs are getting some good surrounds off here on stuff like the Harlid infantry. Lindon's infantry need to come forward and plug up these gaps so they've got more of a solid front line. The Trolls are coming forward, however, and this could lead to them smashing right through the front line and getting into the archers. Over here, of course, with the Olag High. Charge again. That's a very strange running ammunition. Meanwhile, over here you can see that Dale actually coming over to support Lindon, which is interesting. With a unit of Earls and with a unit of Earls of Dale. And there's some Noldor and Horse Swords behind the line, so Mordor need to break through the Lindon front line quickly, to be honest with you, to make this worth it. Noldor and Horse Swords getting a good charge there onto the Troll Drummers. The Temple Guard are also back here. The Temple Guard should probably have been focusing down the Horse Lords for a long time, to be honest with you. These Trolls need to push through the line quickly, because now they're going to be engaged upon by all of these more elite Lindon units. Noldor and Blade Masters and Mithlond Sword Masters coming forward. And overall, I don't think Mordor are going to be able to do it. I think they're going to break before they are able. The Earls of Dale getting a nice charge there into the back of the Moran infantry. Lindon are also wrapping around the side, so I think Mordor have just about had it. The skirmish fight is still going on between Gondor and Dale. The Elves are also still just poking away at one another. What's going on over here? Well, actually, there's some Lothlorien Mounted Company getting a nice charge here into the back of the Eladris Guardians. So, again, this really just counts as the harassing stage, but Lothlorien are definitely having the better of it on this side, which is probably for the best, because I think Mordor are likely to fall apart on this flank. See, the balance of forces is evenly matched. The Trolls are in here, but I don't think they're going to be enough to... Well, one of the Nazgul, actually. That might be General versus General. The Bearded Elf. Laid low. Noldor and Horse Lords. What's left of the Mordor skirmish line is being picked apart. And now, well, it's now or never for the Melkor's Chosen. They need to do something to stop these Earls of Dale marauding around the back lines. They may be melee cavalry, but even so, it's more the morale damage they're going to be doing by charging these Morannon units in the back. And it might honestly be too late already. Mordor's army is not looking too healthy. The Melkor's Chosen are going to be able to get into these Earls of Dale. And actually over here we can see that the Pineth Galen cavalry is charging. Charging into these Earls of Escaroth. Decent charge there. Catching them on the thinner part of their formation, but this of course means that they can be counter-charged by the Noldor and Horse Lords. And without HP, the Horse Lords should be able to beat the Pineth Galen cavalry. It looks like things are going to get going on all fronts now, because Gondor are moving forward, and I think Lothlorien are also moving forward. I think they sense that their ally over here in Mordor is going to fall apart relatively soon, and they need to have some sort of victory in the centre or on the other flank if they're going to be able to meet Lindon's army. The last thing they need to see is Lindon's reinforcements coming over the war flanks, but Mordor are certainly routing off in all directions. I'm honestly surprised Mordor didn't fare better in that skirmish fight, unless they just weren't firing at the right targets. Because Mordor, you know, you don't invest a great deal in your archers. You can afford to target whatever, and generally speaking, they'll pay for themselves. If you could cut down Lindon's archer force initially, then they would be forced to use their Wardens of Elos Tyrion on you. which, again, Rangers you want to be keeping until the infantry is moving forward, because then you can do an enormous amount of damage on the approach. Noldor Guard coming over here, so yeah, Lindon are pretty much victorious over here already. What's going on in the middle? Looks like Gondor are moving over to both flanks. So they're actually going to try and avoid engaging the Morroquendi pikes in the front, I think, which is probably wise. The Morroquendi pikes will be able to hold them up for long enough that Lindon will be able to come around and squash them in from the sides. But I think really Lothlorien, if the blue team are going to have much success here, I think Lothlorien are going to need to be the ones to carry them. Simply because I think they've had the better of the engagement so far with Imladris. And they can probably beat Imladris. And then it will be one flank each, but Mordor did lose in a pretty spectacular fashion over on the other flank, so Lothlorien need to have a good engagement over here. The Sylvan Rangers, I think, are just going to be firing all along the lines. Indeed they are. Getting a huge amount of fire there into the Imladris sentries, killing several of them. Imladris sentries, of course, one of the finer pike units in the game, but they are unshielded. Imladris will lose this fight over here, I think, but if Imladris can kill more of their opponent than Mordor managed of Lindon, then this fight may already be done, because Lindon have still got a lot of scary units left alive. These Imladris Guardians are moving forward. The Lothlorien Mounted Company may well be stuck here. Looks like they're shaken, so they might well rout off here, because they are being attacked by those archers. Lothlorien doing their best to try and get round the flanks. But the Eldarenwe Heruhatal and the Imladris sentries, they are holding fast. And this unit over here has taken a huge amount of damage from the Sylvan Rangers, but all things considered, Imladris have held up relatively well to this Lothlorien assault, even if they are doomed to lose. Let's go and have a look at what's going on over here. So Gondor attacking both flanks.
Only half the enemy force remains.
The Nimlothian Honor Guard moving forth. I mean, these cavalry units charging into the front of pikes is an interesting move. The Palagir Marines, however, supporting the Gondorian advance on both flanks. The Gondor infantry actually trading relatively evenly. Well, actually, the Citadel Guard are here, so never mind. The Elves of Esgaroth doing a good job at holding back a superior force here. Ramasekor garrison archers just being used as chaff to slow down the Girians paladins. But desperation may well start to set in soon, because Lindon are going to be forming up and they're going to be coming in from the sides. Gondor Spearmen in the background over there. Meanwhile, here in the middle, the Lothlorien Ballista is actually firing right along the Dalian line. It's got a perfect shot there. So, definitely a very good bit of support play there from Lothlorien. And this may well help Gondor just force their way through the lines. Gondor now the Wardens of the White Tower with more of a black colour scheme, with black capes to go with their contemporaries. That was a pretty terrible amount of friendly fire though. This Ballista has got its fair share of friendly fire in this match. Morroquendi bows are routing. So Dale's flank over here has been crushed thanks to the Ballista and the assault from Gondor. The Lake Town infantry victory seems certain against the veterans of Osgiliath. I do like how Gondor has chosen to engage this though. Where there's a powerful unit, he's generally sent one of his chaff units to simply slow them down, and then he's focused his assaults on certain positions. That's good. The Earls of Dale are still here though, and the Earls of Dale could well put pay to this advance. Yeah, they've done a very good job so far, these Earls of Dale. First at supporting Lindon, and now they need to save their own army. Getting a rear charge as these Palagir Marines, maybe? No, they're getting into the Gandalf's Retinue Bodyguard, and the Gandalf's Retinue Bodyguard getting a decent charge off, and then a huge volley from those javelins. So yeah, these Earls of Dale are going to fall away very quickly, although there's going to be some friendly fire in there as well. Lindon are now on their way over here though, and the Wardens of Harlingen coming over here, probably to finish off these Pinnithgelen cavalry. But Gondor would have been victorious on this front line, I think, but now Lindon are going to be able to clean up what's left of this flank over here. As we look over to see what's happening with Lothlorien and with Imladris, we can see that the Sindar Blade Masters doing well against the Eldarenwe Heruhatal. There goes the Mordor General. So the Nazgul were actually still fighting all this time. So Mordor not going quietly into that good night, despite having the full force of Lindon's skirmish line spraying him down. Sindar Blade Masters over here trying their best against the Imladris Blade Masters and succeeding with the support of the skirmish line, I would imagine. But Lothlorien are, Imladris are doing a very good job here of just sort of holding Lothlorien at bay, because the mistakes they made early on made it very difficult for them to come back from it, honestly. Retreating like that, inviting Imladris to come, Lothlorien to come to you, I should say, with their siege advantage and such. You never want to try and invite enemy teams to surround you.
Half the enemy force remains.
Very rarely is that going to work out in a positive way for you. These Lothlorien Swordmasters, with the support of the Staff Masters, doing very well. Eventually Imladra's is going to fall away, but I think they've managed to kill more of Lothlorien than Mordor managed of Lindon, which may yet prove to be very key indeed. Gondor over here are being victorious as well though, so it's going to be sort of what's left of Dale and Gondor and what's left of Lothlorien and Lindon as well, so these Morroquendi bows return from routing, although they've been thrown under the bus somewhat against a numerically superior Gondorian force. These Morroquendi pikes are taking fire from something. Sylvan Rangers. Those Sylvan Rangers have done a very good job so far. Firing into the pikes, getting a decent amount of body piercing kills. I think we'll talk about my feelings on Rangers after the fight though. Harlingen infantry moving in. And they have surrounded these Nimnothian Honour Guard, and their victory still seems certain for them. I can't imagine that'll last all that much longer. Yeah, indeed, defeat seems certain, but they're a very tough unit to take down, as they should be. But the support of Lindon may well yet prove to be what wins them this fight, because they still have a decent army left. And slowly but surely they're going to be able to roll up the line, because Lothlorien are still being held up by Imladris. With these Wardens of the White Tower as well. You can see these Eldarenwe Heru Hatal just not giving up the fight. Fair play to Eclipse here. His front line is held, is well crafted. Solid units as well. Imladris' infantry is superior to Lothlorien's after all, just about in most cases. The armour certainly helps. These Sylvan Rangers. Of course, they have been in the game for quite a while. I think Sentinels of the Woodland Realms was their initial name in vanilla. But it looks like they have now run out of ammunition, so they have pulled out their blades. Meanwhile, Galathrun Riders still large and in charge over here. Multiple HP bow cavalry. They're a Temple Guard over here. So Mordor were able to sort of retreat some of their units. Temple Guard are no slouches in melee. These Wardens of Harlingen are not going to be a match for them in a sustained combat. And honestly, Diktar's units over here kind of tied up by just the remnants of Mordor, so I do give Second Pink some credit for holding up Lindon for longer. Similar sort of praise as Imladris, ultimately not victorious, but even when all hope was lost, they didn't give in. Wardens of the White Tower moving forward, as well as these 4 Lindon Archers and the Gondor Spearmen. Slowly but surely, Lindon are helping their allies envelop alongside what's remaining of Dale. Although there's sort of a surround over here for the blue team and then a surround over here for the red team. Very odd pockets of fighting, but now a lot of Lothlorien's troops are cresting the horizon. Some Sindar Blade Masters, so can Lothlorien's troops overcome Lindon's? Time will tell, because we are entering the closing stages of this fight now. Wardens of the White Tower, very solid infantry unit, not the easiest unit to bring down. And I question whether Lindon have got the capabilities left to do that. I mean, they're taking some hits in the back from what? Ooh, Galathrun Riders. Well played here from Lothlorien. Gandalf's retinue bodyguard is on the way, however. Still a decent amount of them left, 17. And indeed, the Galathrun Riders... Oh no, they're on the same team, aren't I? I'm stupid. Never mind. These Harlingen Guard are on the way over here now, though. And they do... Well, the Galathrun Riders honestly kind of get away. None of them die. That's amazing, considering they were spears. Oh no, one of them did die. Never mind. One fell. Lothlorien are now here in the mix as well. It's really just a sort of chaotic brawl here in the middle now. Mithlond Swordmasters. There's also these Gandalf's retinue bodyguard. What are they going to do? Are they going to charge into the back of these Mithlond Swordmasters? Probably. These Harland infantry are over here. Mithlond Swordmasters in this sort of situation when they're backed up by Harland infantry. Again, it's a very tense fight this. Very close still. The blue team are 2 percentage points behind, but they could pull this back. They certainly have more in the way of skirmish firepower at this point. Lothlorien has done a very good job here. Dale managed to hold together one of their flanks long enough for Lothlorien's support to arrive, but I'm not sure. I think Lindon's do still have a few units that are pretty scary. I think Nolder and Blade Masters are somewhere. there's some Mithlon Swordmasters. Wardens of Alos Tyrion are out of ammunition. The Wardens of the White Tower just tanking it out here in the middle alongside their Lothlorien allies. There's not a great amount of Dale left alive, which may yet prove to be quite a determining factor. There's actually still some Imladris troops alive. The Elder Enway Haru Hatal will ultimately lose this fight, but they're keeping this unit of Sindar Blade Masters away from the main fight. The Temple Guard is still alive from Mordor as well, so these are AP missiles, which are being utilised to good effect here for the blue team. Meanwhile, this cycle charging over here, though, is lethal as well. If I were the Temple Guard, I would absolutely be targeting down the Gandalf's Retinue Bodyguard, because a unit of cavalry like this, Lancer cavalry in the late game that's well armoured, well shielded, and has got multiple HP, that could yet prove to be the thing which wins the battle. You know, it's not often that Gondor are going to be winning battles based on the strength of their cavalry, but in this situation they may very well, because there's not really a huge amount that can answer them except this unit of Temple Guard, and I don't know how much ammo they've got left. So they have been firing intermittently throughout the battle. Noldorin Guard over here, as well as some Galathran Riders. Chaos all around. This is still a very, very close fight. Sindar Blade Masters moving forward. What's going on over here? Gondor Infantry and the Retinue Bodyguard. I mean, there's still some Gondorians sort of trying to pick their engagements. If this Gandalf's Retinue Bodyguard gets a charge off onto the Temple Guard, I don't fancy the chances of the blue team, honestly. It looks as though that's what they're going to be doing. Or perhaps not. They're going to be going right in front of them. And look at that. They ran into the stakes. Oh no. That could be lethal. There goes the Dalian General. So it's down to Lindon, essentially, and I don't think Lindon are going to have it. I think, you know, the survivability of the Gondorians and the killing power of Lindon is going to be enough to overcome Lothlorien here. That cavalry could well have been used to enormous effect for, well actually no, Gondor, that is Gondorian cavalry, isn't it? But even so, even with the loss of their cavalry, I'm not sure Lothlorien are going to have enough, because if this was mounted company with the heavy charges, then maybe, but they are bow cavalry, whose charges are quite tame, really, in comparison. So if we have a look over here, yeah, the blue team have pulled ahead. Gondor just don't go down easy. And ultimately Dale fell apart quicker than Gondor did. And Lindon is really all that's left, and there's not many of them left alive. I have to give big credit to the Lothlorien player. I think Lango did very well. Gondor as well. Built their line decently enough. And ultimately Dale invested very heavily in their skirmishers, but they played into Gondor's hands somewhat by using the majority of their skirmish firepower on units which are designed from the ground up to be, you know, arrow shields. They absorb arrow fire, they're tar pits. You know, Mordor were quite fortunate really that ultimately their ill-fated charge didn't cost the blue team the game, but again, that's less Mordor's fault, because that's what Mordor are kind of designed to do, and more something that I'll get onto after the battle is over. Here we can see the Pelagian Marines, shaken and tired. Harland Infantry taking some hits in the back from some Ethel Tirith as well, so this is truly the end. Close fight though. Good one to start off 0.96, I think. Looks like it's going to be within perhaps 5% even. Temple Guard, now they're out of ammunition. Good save this from Mordor. Those armour-piercing missiles were certainly a big help in the late game at helping to bring down individual units. We'll see how well they did in just a moment, but the Black Númenóreans getting into melee, finishing off what remains of the Elves of Lindon.
If we continue like this, we will smash the enemy.
Smash the enemy indeed. Those Wardens of the White Tower tanked out an enormous amount of damage as well. They were in the fight for a long time. There's only 15 of them remaining, but few units embody the Gondorian spirit quite like them. And that is going to be it. Victory. And indeed, within 3% in terms of kills. Obviously there's routing units all over the place, but a close fight, back and forth as well. For a while there I thought the red team had it. I thought Mordor's collapse heralded the beginning of victory for the red team. But ultimately, I think Gondor's resilience more than anything else was something which really helped the factions here. And Lothlorien, of course, managing to take advantage of Imladris' early retreat. Imladris, of course, getting the lowest amount of kills there, but then they were primarily fighting off against other elves. Lothlorien were able to bolster their kills somewhat by, of course, still being alive in the late game. Having a look at some of these kills, I mean, Lindon getting a huge amount of kills, obviously, on the Mordor army. When it's elves against orcs, of course, the elves are going to get tons of kills. Second pink, again, they were up against elves, so they got lower kills. Here in the middle, though, two kingdoms of men facing off against one another, Gondor and Dale, and Gondor having slightly the better of that engagement. I think, their army composition was well built for the opponent they were facing, and I feel as though Dale played into their hands somewhat in this situation. Meanwhile, let's go and have a look at what happened with Mordor. Nazgul, in the middle of that fight, got a lot of kills. The Temple Guard getting a lot of kills, and the Olag High, despite the fact the Mordor front line fell apart quickly, getting a decent amount of kills as well. They were laid low quickly, but they took a fair few elves with them. Orc Archers getting a decent number of kills. Honestly, seeing that there are only 2 Orc Archers here, I would have brought more archers, to be honest with you. And that brings me on to something that I am a little bit concerned about with regards to what I'm experienced in the testing for 0.96, and that's the prevalence of archers still. I mean, I did jokingly refer to it as Napoleon Total War during the course of the battle, but honestly at times it has felt like that a little bit, and the body piercing does contribute to that somewhat, I think, because it's so powerful. Definitely reducing the ranges from 2 to 1 was absolutely a necessity, because I think the tournament showcased more than anything else the kind of defensive play that rangers sort of engender in people. It makes it very, very unattractive a proposition to attack when you are dealing with a unit which can potentially get 2,000 kills in a single match. Granted, they're only likely to get 2,000 kills in a siege where there's a huge blob, but the fact that there is a unit that has that much killing power is questionable. And that also kind of decides what most battles are like. The skirmish phase in even a battle like this, I mean, a 3v3 tends to have a lot more aggressive play, because for a start the armies have got a more limited initial space to work with, so you are able to sort of condense your army and attack in a much more consistent position than you are in a 1v1 where you have the whole field to work with and you have to spread out a little bit, and archers can become a little bit more potent. But particularly, in a lot of 2v2s and a lot of 1v1s, skirmishers are king, in a big way, and I have yet to see anything which is to convince me that this is not the case. Every single testing fight I was in, involved, most of my opponents stacking up with their archers a lot, and that's one of the reasons, honestly, why Umbar has rapidly become my favourite faction, because they, more so than most, are able to engage in skirmish fights and come out of it on top simply because they're so resilient. Gondor is another faction that is like this. You are able to absorb a lot of this arrow fire, and then when all of the bullshit is out of the way, you can get into the fight properly and you can win. And that's a little bit unfortunate, because anytime you try and do something, like for example going for a bit of an ambush army with Rudauer, for example, that necessitates you bringing a lot of your hidden units, and the only archer of yours that can hide in open ground is your rangers, so you have one archer unit. That's not going to be sufficient. I mean, particularly against factions like the Elves, for example, or Dale, or Arthedain, you're going to be in a whole heap of trouble if you try and do something like that. So you have to be a little bit more predictable in many ways. You have to bring a lot of your cheaper archers, and then it turns again into a protracted skirmish fight. I hope that the meta develops in a different way. I really do, because that sort of fight for me is not fun, and I didn't have a great deal of fun during the testing process as a result, and it's honestly one of the reasons why I tend to avoid the tournaments as well, because the kind of play that is involved in such things, the way to win a battle in such ways is to play like that, and there's nothing wrong with that specifically. I just don't find it all that entertaining to sit through a 15 to 20 minute skirmish fight in a 2v2 field battle. It just doesn't really engender that sort of sense of Lord of the Rings to me, particularly when even the orcs have to engage in it for the most part. The orcs can still be aggressive, you know, more so than the others, simply because they have more men that they can just throw under the bus. But even they, you know, you saw how Mordor's charge went against Lindon in this situation. Essentially, a unit of rangers and a couple of units of basic horse archers, I should say, were enough to completely eviscerate the centre of their line, and then Lindon were able to crush in from the sides. That's the sort of tactic which Mordor should be able to use, and they were punished severely for it in this battle. And the blue team were quite fortunate to win. Mordor did a very good job at saving some of his more important assets for other fights when, you know, archer ammunition would be running low in the late game. Even so, you know, I mean, this is also a subjective view. You know, this is not something which is, you know, factual. You know, this is a personal preference of mine. You know, I know that some people, for example, do like that sort of thing, where there's a skirmish fight and you have to sort of position and ration out your men in certain ways and sort of try and save yourself for the late game. You know, and there is a certain entertainment to be had in that, but not when it's every battle. Yeah, and that's kind of my opinion on things. I am excited for 0.96 in spite of what I've said here, because obviously there's a lot more mechanics involved, there's more unit models, and, you know, the balance tweaks should help out, because it's certainly not as bad as it was, because obviously, you know, the tournament was played on 0.95 and every battle I saw was a very, very long skirmish heavy affair. One fight actually went for, I think, a 2v2 which went for over an hour, and then someone crashed, you know, and they had to run it over again, you know, and that sets alarm bells off in my mind, especially seeing as now that Thrones of Britannia's out and it's so focused around a melee engagement. It's been quite refreshing, honestly. I hope I'm wrong. I hope the meta develops in other ways. You know, I'm not clever enough with my army compositions to develop a meta personally, but I hope that people do find ways around this, because it does concern me somewhat that the battles might become a little bit stale and a little bit predictable as time goes on if archers are sort of the be all and end all. You know, if you try and be aggressive with certain factions, it's just not viable in many ways. But yes, regardless of that, those are my initial thoughts on 0.96. I hope many of which I'm mistaken about, but I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you'll join me for whatever is next, which I hope will be sort of a large scale siege, maybe on WK's new and improved Minas Tirith.